Hello all, this is Vanessa Love. This is my channel about the health fields and related topics. Alright, so I wanted to talk today about grief after abortion. Again, I know that my channel is probably never going to be monetized. I just don't feel like I can get that big on this platform, so I'm not worried about monetization at this point. I was for a while, now not so much. Anyway, so I wanted to talk about uncommon ways that grief kind of people who are affected by abortion, and then like some of the more typical ways. So I'm not here to be like political or be like, oh, they shouldn't do this or they should do it. I'm just here because it happens and it's a topic in therapy. So I'm definitely going to be watching my comments on this channel, and approving the ones that aren't so political, just by the way. Okay. So one of the unusual things that we don't really consider about abortion and like post-abortion is men and how they might be affected by that. It could be, it's mostly the father who might be affected by that. So, just kind of, again, raising awareness. I had a client and his girlfriend at the time ended up purposefully miscarrying. She drank too much with her friends to make sure that she did not carry a child to term, like that she did not, that she didn't remain pregnant. And he was so shocked by it that he didn't mention it in therapy for quite some time. So like this went on for I think a couple of months before he was like, yeah, so this happened. And all he wanted to do was be a father. Like that was one of his things. Like he definitely wanted to have that role. And there was a lot of loss there. There was a lot of grief there that this person who he was with decided that they didn't want to be pregnant, and then just hadn't really had that conversation, or maybe she was against medical abortion or something like that, but still eventually purposefully had a miscarriage, and it hurt. And again, he was so shocked he didn't talk about it for a couple of months. I'm really glad that he did eventually talk about it, because it is a topic to definitely explore in therapy, and especially how it affects men, because men often feel helpless in these situations and they don't feel like they have the right almost to be like, hey, I do want to have a child, let's figure this out, because overall the woman has the right to choose, right? So it's it's a whole complicated mess, but it's also one of those things that is definitely a whole 1 or 2 therapy sessions can definitely be dedicated to this topic and the grief and the sadness of someone doing this purposefully. And especially if, he was against abortion to begin with, this adds another layer to that. And again, there's so much sadness, there's so much grief there that it does need to be explored. And I don't think that a lot of people think about that. And, maybe he didn't think to even bring it up because there were so many other issues to bring up, but it definitely is a topic, especially when it brings such distress. And, maybe he felt that he couldn't talk about it, and that makes me feel even worse, because I feel like he felt he had to be alone with this. I think eventually her decisions and other things led to their breakup, which maybe good or bad, but at the same time, this was one of those things, I think near the end of their relationship, where this would have had an effect on that. Yeah. Let's see. So teen pregnancy. Now, what a topic, right? That's a very, very tough topic to even broach. I have had a couple of clients who were teenagers who got pregnant, and then either they kind of were maybe I should have an abortion, but mostly felt pressured and almost forced to do it. In one case, she was forced to do it because she was so young that she wasn't really able to understand what was going on, or that like she wasn't in, also there are people who aren't in a family situation where like they can, where like the teen can continue to go to school and, you know, have a life, um, like, you know, with like support. Like there wasn't going to be much support if this child was brought to term. So like, yes, she was forced, unfortunately. And then in a couple of these cases, other adults came forward and harassed the teenager. And it's one of those things where it's like, okay, so now they have this grief. They're like kind of dealing with this, like not having a choice in this. And then on top of that, having people push their political beliefs and personal beliefs onto the person is just so, like, there's so much more to it. So, you know, guilt, shame already around teenage sexuality, and then you have people who are pushing for this, and then you have people who, you know, like they don't feel like they have a choice, and then you have people who are, you know, and like it is all a very complex and upsetting situation that definitely needs to be addressed in therapy. I know a lot of people experience these things, so like, you know, it's one of those things where I'm like, I want to let you know it's okay. It's okay to talk about. And like, no matter the therapist, like talk to your therapist if you have one about this, or maybe join a grief group to talk about some of this stuff. Now, some grief groups might not be the right place for this, especially if it's like a grief group that's like more about, you know, people who had long lives and who ended up passing away from like a disease or something, you know. So definitely, hopefully the therapist in that situation or support group is kind of like telling people what to expect in a situation like that. But there's still grief. It is still a death. Like it can still affect someone's life very, very much emotionally. And then you also have the people who, like mostly adults, made the decision, regret it, blame themselves, have that shame. They kind of need to like really express and figure out what they can do to honor, you know, this child who didn't come to term, and that there's, you know, that there's a disconnect, but it's also that there's grief. And again, acknowledging that that's a grief point, and that it is something that someone can hold in them and not feel comfortable talking about, especially because of the political climate where that might not be acceptable. There's also people who wish they had an abortion but couldn't afford one, and like that type of grief of, well, I didn't feel like I had a choice here, or I felt helpless, or I felt hopeless, and I could never just get to where I'm going. It was almost cheaper to have a child than it was to have the abortion, you know, and all of this other stuff. And then you have the people who are well-adjusted, who are like, oh, you know, occasionally I think about it. I'm perfectly fine. It was a fine decision for me, you know, and like without that clinical like distress, it's not really a point of interest to a therapist, mostly. Like if you do have a therapist who's like really trying to like get you to feel, you know, something about that, like that might not be the therapist for you, because if they think that just automatically you should feel shame or you should feel upset by your decision, like that might taint the whole, like, and really color the whole therapeutic relationship. And like that might not be the therapist for you, or that might not be the topic for that therapist, especially if like, yeah, they have their own personal like, oh, but you should. Everyone has their own experiences. This might be something that's just perfectly fine, and that, you know, you experienced, it happened, okay, moving on. And you know, so there is a lot to this. I've always meant to like write something out about it, but I feel like writing it out does take a lot more time than just doing a video. So I thought that I would do the video, and hopefully it will be well received. Anyway, I hope that was helpful for you. And yeah, just thanks for liking, subscribing, and still watching my videos after like I took my little break. Anyway, thanks so much for watching.